Hello and welcome to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about a 70-year-old film, 1951's Bride of the Gorilla. And in Bride of the Gorilla, we meet Barney Chavez, the foreman of a rubber tapping estate in West Africa. Barney is an embittered man. He is extremely jealous of his boss's wealth and also of his boss's beautiful young wife. Who is lonely and unhappy in West Africa. She's got no friends. Her husband is emotionally distant from her, and basically from Chavez's perspective, his boss has everything in the world, wealth and a beautiful woman who just wants his love, and he's squandering it all while Chavez himself has very little and has to work hard. And so when the opportunity comes to murder his boss, Chavez takes it. The two men get into a squabble, and Chavez basically throws the other man on top of a snake. The snake bites the plantation owner, who dies, and clearly, it's just a death by misadventure. Unfortunately, a snake bit him. There's no reason for anyone to suspect Chavez was the murderer, right? So he then declares his passion to the young widow, who, having been starved of anyone's affection, enthusiastically returns them. They get married, and Chavez has everything he ever wanted. He now has part ownership of the whole plantation. He's got a beautiful, loving wife. Seems like all his dreams have come true, and it just took one little murder to get away with it, right? Well, unfortunately for him, his crime was witnessed by one of the plantation workers, who also happens to be a wise woman, and she curses Chavez to be transformed into the beast he really is. Now, his struggles with the effects of this apparently successful curse put strain on his new relationship with his wife, and his life is further complicated by the local police commissioner, who has suspicions about the plantation owner's death, even though there's no kind of evidence to suggest that there's more to it. He is suspicious, and he's looking into it. So will Chavez get away with his crime, or will he reap what he has sowed? Well, that's the point of watching the movie, after all, isn't it? So there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about with this film, because there's a couple of interesting features about it. So number one, the cast. So the film stars two names that are recognisable today. Lon Chaney, it's actually Lon Chaney Jr., billed as he often was under his father's name, who was at this time some 20 years into his 40-plus year career, and then also Raymond Burr. Now, Burr's peak period of kind of recognisability was still to come. During the 50s, so 1954 he was in Rear Window, 1956 he was in the US version of Godzilla, and then in 1957 he began his sort of most high profile, I guess, role when he began appearing as Perry Mason in the highly successful TV show of the same name, and he'd be in that role for nearly a decade. But you'll see that billed above them both in 1951 is Barbara Payton, who stormed prominence in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, a 1950 film in which she appeared as the girlfriend of James Cagney's criminal protagonist. And, she was appearing against a very well-respected actor, and she really held her own in that movie. And even in this film, Bride of the Gorilla, which was filmed in a mere 10 days and was made on the cheap, you can see that she was a talented actor, that she had real screen presence. So why is she in this movie, and why have you likely not heard of her? Well, unfortunately, after Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, her next two films were not financially successful, and she then had a very public and ultimately violent romantic entanglement in which her boyfriend beat her fiancé into an 18-hour coma. In 1951, that was not the sort of thing that your career could survive, which is why, 18 months after Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, she's appearing in this, and she would, after this, only go on to 5 more credited roles, all of them in low-budget films, before unfortunately dying at the age of only 39 of heart and liver failure. She had a chronic problem with alcoholism, basically. So that's who Barbara Payton was and why you've not heard of her. But it is. You watch this movie, and even given the cheapness of the film, don't take me wrong, Burr and Chaney are good in this film too. Part of the reason that this movie works as well as it does, and if that's still not to a huge extent, is because the cast is way better than a project like this actually deserves. But that's why you've probably not heard of Barbara Payton, and I thought it was worth talking about her because she was a talented actor, and unfortunately, because of circumstances outside of her actual talent, her career was cut very, very short. Second thing I wanted to talk about is the nature of the curse in the film. So for much of the movie, the script avoids definitively stating whether the curse actually causes Chavez to literally transform into a beast, or if the effects are entirely in his head. Now, I think that it's very likely that there are very prosaic, real-world reasons for this ambiguity. In other words, avoiding the need for an expensive transformation sequence, because the filmmakers probably couldn't afford to do one. If you have, and also, you don't need action sequences like it. I think it's a cost-saving measure in large part. But I think this is a case of necessity being made something of a virtue by the script. Now, I suspect that not everyone will agree, but I actually liked the ambiguity of this point in the film, and I thought it worked well. Now, not everything else in the film does work well, of course. It's cheaply made, and that shows on numerous occasions, particularly in the unconvincing nature of the jungle, quote-unquote, which is clearly a soundstage. But this is one element of the film where I feel like, they did make a virtue of the necessity of doing things cheaply. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the marketing and the positioning of this film. A title like Bride of the Gorilla, let's not beat about the bush. It intimates bestiality right off the bat. It's just an intimation, obviously, but it intimates it. And the poster above is quite titillating in general, both in its text and its images. We have scantily clad ladies, we have promises of primitive passion, and that nothing like it has ever been seen before. And I've seen other posters of films which are even more lurid than this, with captions like, her marriage vows were more than fulfilled, wink wink, nudge nudge, say no more, and her clothes torn away, screaming in terror. The second, which not only doesn't actually happen, but is terrible grammar, since, you can easily read that as the clothes were doing the screaming. But just in case, there are any doubt about this, the actual film is way more tame and mild than the marketing suggests. But as we can see, even 70 years ago, sex is being used to sell. And it's very clear, that is what this film has to offer, is promises that it's not going to follow through on, basically, about its titillating nature. Probably, potentially, I guess, trading in on the fact that, by this stage, Ms. Payton had the notorious kind of, romantic issue going on. But sex sells. It probably always will, while we, for a very long time, until we get over a lot of our hang-ups about it. But that's Bride of the Gorilla, a cheaply made 10-day film with a cast that it doesn't deserve, but that occasionally does some smart stuff within its own limitations. What am I going to talk about next time? 2003 mystery thriller movie, Nemesis Game. We're going to talk about what this film does right and what this film does wrong. One of these lists will be longer than the other. No prizes for guessing which one. So that'll be next time. In the meantime, thanks for watching this one, and I hope you enjoyed it.